Please be seated. Mr. Chief Executive, are there any apologies from members? I will call on my chaplain to say prayers.
Thanks for all those who have supported the life, witness and prosperity of this country. We give you heartfelt thanks for the life of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, steadfast in upholding the faith of the Church, steadfast in service of others and of this nation. We remember also those who have been prominent in this county. We pray for the repose of the soul of Councillor Ian Lawson, who has died recently, and for those also known to us who now rest in peace, praying in particular for Zebun Nasa. May they rest in peace and rise in glory. And we pray for this, our county, for all who serve the residents, that we may work tirelessly for the improvement of the health, welfare and good well-being of those in Staffordshire. We pray for this, our county council, that we may be resolute in upholding the traditions and the well-being of those of our residents, that we may hold them constantly in our thoughts, our minds and our prayers. We ask this in the name of Jesus our Lord. Amen. Amen. We pray that you will bless the work of this county, for those who is praying, especially for those who lead, those who serve, for the members and the officers who work for this, for the well-being of our residents. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. And I invite you, if you wish, to join in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Please be seated. Mr. Chief Executive, are there any apologies from members?
Hood and Thomas Loughborough-Rudd.
Thank you. Does any member wish to declare an interest? Thank you. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 21st July 2022 be signed as a true record. Is that agreed? Item number 4, Chairman's Correspondence. Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Although this was the news that we'd all been fearing for a little while, the announcement of the passing of Her Majesty was a huge shock to us all. It was undoubtedly a sadness which was felt across the country, the county and the country. Her Majesty had been a constant reassuring presence in our lives for so long. Her life of service to the country and its people has been a beacon to us. I look forward with confidence to the reign of our new King, and particularly to be able to welcome him on some future occasion to our county. County Councillor Ian Lawson. It is my sad duty to inform members of a death on the 9th of October 2022 of Councillor Ian Lawson. Mr Lawson has represented the Biddulph North, Staffordshire Moorlands electoral division on the County Council since 2009. He served on a number of the Council's committees, including the Social Care Scrutiny Committee, Children, Young People and Families Scrutiny Committee, Regeneration Infrastructure Scrutiny Committee, Property Skills Education Select Committee, Planning Committee, Healthy Staffordshire Select Committee, Audit and Standards Committee, Prosperous Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Standing Advisory Committee on Religious Education, and the Charities and Trusts Committee. And there is one missing that I know he was on because I was on with him, and that was the Fire Committee, the Staffordshire and Stoke Fire Committee. Mr Lawson also served as Chairman of the County Council between May 2012 and May 2015. I will now ask if anybody wishes to pay any tributes to Councillor Lawson before we have a silence. Councillor Mark Sutton is the first to ask.
Thank you, Chairman, and I will be fairly brief. Ian was a chairman for the first 3 years that I was on this council, and I got to know him particularly well from our times that we went to Bremen together in support of the German War Graves Commission, the Volksband. I have fond memories of my time with him and Kay. And together we met a gentleman who's become a good friend of Staffordshire, Dietmar from the Volksband, and I know Dietmar has already been in touch, and I just wanted to share just a couple of words from Dietmar. What a great loss, such sad news. I had the honour and the pleasure of knowing Ian for more than 10 years. A great character, what a good and true friend. And I think that just sums up Ian completely. He will certainly be missed. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Dietmar wrote to me as well, as you know, and I respond on behalf of the County Council to him for all the work he did with Ian while Ian was the chairman. Councillor Janet Eagland.
Thank you, Chairman. I was very sorry to hear the news of the passing of Ian. Always immaculately dressed, always ready with his special charming way of greeting everyone. The last time we met socially was in the library here in County Buildings when the visitors from Bremen came on their yearly visit to Staffordshire. The leaders from Bremen especially asked for a tea event with Ian, Kay, his wife, past Chairman Kath Perry, myself and Vice Chairman Phil Hewitt. At that afternoon tea, he talked openly about not being around for much longer. I was dismayed at his remarks and said so. He just smiled at me with that glint in his eye. He was someone I looked up to and took notice of when sitting by his side for 3 years at full council meetings. He was a good and fair chairman, stood no nonsense from the councillors, whatever their political persuasions. I remember one time at such a meeting, a member, when asking a question, called him chair. He interrupted that councillor and pointed to the chair he was sitting on. "That's a chair," he said. "I'm the chairman of Staffordshire County Council." I especially will miss his lovely manner. We got to know each other very well over the 3 years. A gentleman and in every sense of the word. Whenever we met, he always made me feel that that smile was especially for me, when in fact it was used as a smile for everyone. You will be very much missed, Ian Lawson. Thank you for your friendship.
Thank you. Councillor Johnny McMahon. Councillor John Francis.
Lawson, he was a very, very good friend to me. There was three of us who were going on at the council in the same time in 2009. Ian Lawson, Jeff Martin and myself. And we ended up being called the Gang of Three because we were always together when we met at council, and we used to always go for lunch together. We used to have some fantastic times. And I was very sad to hear about his passing, and I offer my condolences to Kay, which I think the full council should do. He was a fantastic guy, heck of a character. He was couldn't do enough for anybody. He was always there. Whatever people wanted, he was always there. He had a fantastic business, and he was a true gentleman, as has been pointed out from Janet. So I think from this council's point of view, it's a great loss, and we need more people like him. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Councillor Mike Sutherland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm talking on behalf of my colleagues from Cannock Chase, and it is humbling to hear what's already been said, and also in the media since his sad announcement of his death. For me, he was very approachable. He made you comfortable when he met you. He was the sort of person that would walk up to you and, hello, introduce himself and ask. He was listening about you, not about him, about you. He was quite a prolific figure. And for me, I met him before I became county councillor at a function, and he walked and worked the room. Not many people can do that, but he did. I'm sure he didn't remember me, but I remembered him, and I think that's important. And many of my colleagues, particularly the latest intake, didn't get the opportunity to what I call walk and talk with him. I did, as did you, Mr. Chair, and Vice Chair, because we were 4 years earlier, so he was in reasonable health. For me, I'm reminded of that Brennan visit, because I talked to Councillor Phil Hewitt, as we do on a regular basis, and I said, what are you up to tomorrow? And he said, oh, I'm having a tea. So, oh, very good, enjoy your tea. And I remembered that a couple of days later I rang him, and he said, you know what? And he mentioned Ian. He said he can still charm the birds off the tree. And I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful thing to say. So on behalf of Cannock Chase councillors, rest in peace, Ian, and thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Jill Heath, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've known Ian, Kay and the family for a long, long time, way before county council days. And in fact, it was before the election in 2009 that I was chatting to Ian and saying, any ideas for a candidate? And he says, have you thought about me? And it was a really good thing that we did. He's contributed to this council fantastically. We go back a long time, really, because they lived in Rushton before they moved up to Biddulph. Kay is a local Rushton girl. And yes, many happy hours spent at the pub in Rushton. And he was always the life and soul of the party. A true gentleman, always immaculately dressed, but a wicked twinkle in his eye. And he'd always got a joke to tell you. He was really good company. So, yes, I think he's been a good councillor and a good person to know. And I'd like to add my condolences and endorse everything that's been said. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heath. Councillor Keith Flunder, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I only really knew Ian since 2017 when he supported me in standing at the last minute for an election in 2017. We only had 6 weeks, and I worked very closely with Ian on that and helped me get to that stage myself. We've been working together for 5.5 years, and I have to mention the B word, Biddulph, because that's where obviously his heart was. He worked with us for on and off for all that time, but what we didn't have at the time was really an understanding from the Biddulph Town Council about how the County Council worked and vice versa. So we've managed to get ourselves onto the Town Council agenda, and we've managed to get ourselves into meeting the clerk on a regular basis, and we've managed to get a much more productive working arrangement between the two of us over those 5.5 years. And we've worked together on many projects in terms of supporting the Biddulph Youth and Community Zone, many bowling clubs, keeping children active as well, and all the rest of it. So it's been a learning curve for me, and I think there was a bit of learning from Ian as well. I won't say anything else about being a gentleman, but he always had a wicked sense of humour, wherever I met him. He was someone who I will miss. My condolences go out to Kay and the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flunder. Councillor David Smith, please.
From the day that I first came onto this council, Ian Lawson became a friend, and he remained a friend and constant contact between the two of us until the day he died, and I will sadly miss him, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Saeed Hussain, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to echo the sadness of, first of all, Her Majesty's Minister death, and would like to convey our sincere thanks for her lifelong service as well. Mr. Chairman, before the prayer today, the Father very kindly also mentioned the sad passing of one of our colleagues' mother, Mrs. Jebunasa. And I remember the whole community came together in the last month to remember her charitable works in here and abroad as well. We are grateful for these recognitions, and I hope she is also resting in peace. Mr. Chairman, it is, like I mentioned before, Her Majesty's said news, and it is also a huge privilege for yourself, Mr. Chairman. You are the 26th Staffordshire County Council Chairman and surely you are the last Chairman of Her Majesty's reign. So I would like to mention a few words about my friend, Mr. Ian Lawson. Mr. Chairman, we know death is the ultimate reality of life. And I have many memories with him since I served with him in many committees and attendance in some trainings as well. He was a perfect gentleman, there is no doubt about it, and I missed his humor as well sometimes. Mr. Chairman, on these occasions, I observed, also in my times in the county, I observed our colleagues, late Michael Gutrex and Councillor Bobby Marshall as well, who sadly passed away while they were in duty. I mean, they were serving in this county till their last day. If this is not the lifetime commitment, I don't know what it is. My sincere condolence and very best wishes to Mr. Ian Lawson and his family. And we need more councillors like this and more commitment like this. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hussain. And I'd like to add Councillor Graham Burnett to that list as well, who died in service 5 years ago. Councillor Kath Perry, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just like to echo everything that the friends around the room have said about Ian. He was a genteel gentleman. And it was a lovely afternoon tea that we had together in the library. But I saw him, actually, and had a conversation with him after that. And it was the day just after the Queen's passing. It was the Friday. I had cause to come to Stafford, to the county buildings, and Ian had come for a planning meeting that wasn't happening, as you probably all gather. And he was sitting on the car park when I went back over there. So I went and had a chat with him, and he was just sitting with the door open. So I went over and had a chat with him, and he was waiting for Kay. Kay had come with him, but she'd gone shopping. How long he was going to wait for Kay, I don't know. But I stood there and had a conversation with him for a good 10 or 15 minutes or so, and then I had to leave him. But can I just say, rest in peace, Ian. You were a lovely man, and thank you for all that you did for Staffordshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Mark Winnington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few words from me. Echo completely what everyone else said. Ian was a true gentleman and a friend, well-rounded, lovely guy. As chair of planning, he actually went above and beyond and turned up when it wasn't even a planning meeting. So thanks, Ian, wherever you are. But he always made sure that he was sensible and had a real input into meetings. So a well-rounded character in terms of the county council. And I think the other thing that came across from me talking to him, he was a well-rounded man in terms of his family. He cared so much for them. And in terms of his business, in his younger years, I think he'd been a force to reckon with in terms of business. Some of the things he told me about were interesting, and I wish I'd sort of met him when he was in his 30s, 40s, because he sounded like he'd had a really adventurous time, and I'll miss seeing him sat over there. Lovely guy. Ellen, thank you.
Thanks to Councillor Winton. Councillor Ross Ward, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I got to know Ian about 12 years ago when I first met him, and about 10 years ago I slightly unexpectedly became chair of the Staffordshire Moorlands Conservative Association. No one was more surprised than me, but Ian was president at the time, and I was very green, and he was enormously supportive to me and very loyal, and became a very great friend to me, and I shall miss him dearly. He was a very, very funny man, quite often on purpose, quite often accidentally. And I think a good example of that is, whilst as I was chairman, one of the roles that I had was to just check everyone's papers, the nomination papers, before an election. And he came to me, and he was always the first with his papers, because he had an enormous enthusiasm and passion for politics. He was always the first with his papers, and he gave me his papers, and he said, I've sorted out, Ross, I've had a problem with a couple of the boxes, but I think I'm all right. Which the alarm bells immediately began to ring, because it is quite a complicated form. I went through the whole form and it was perfect. All the difficult bits about your nominations, your signatures, your roll call, your voter roll number, etc., was all perfect. Got right towards the end where you put your name and it's what you want to get on the ballot paper. The first box is your emblem. And everybody in this room will know there's a code for each particular emblem that you're allowed to put on your ballot paper. Ian, rather than putting a code, wrote Tory tree, brackets, red, white and blue one, not that damn green thing, close brackets. In the box next to it, it says description. In description, you're supposed to put which party you're going to represent, be it Conservative and Unionist, etc. Bear in mind, Ian genuinely thought this was going onto his ballot paper. Under description, he wrote, 6'1", smartly dressed, fairly handsome, brackets, in my day, / silver fox. So that kind of sums the man up. He was a wonderful man. He's a great loss to the county, an enormous loss to the Moorlands and to Biddulph, and a devastating loss to Kay and his family. And I send them my deepest condolences. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ross, for that wonderful tribute. We are too often met here at the start of council meetings, mourning the passing of a former councillor. Men and women who did public duty through council work, but often remembered by only a few due to the passing of time and the fading of memory. Occasionally, sadly, we lose one amongst us who are still serving when they leave us. And there we have, in stark relief, the very visible gap in the chamber where they were once seated, still fresh in the memories, their presence still alive in all our minds. This has been illustrated through the warm tributes and heartfelt tributes that we've heard about Ian's life this morning. I cannot add to what has been said already, as it would merely add to the chorus of warm memories that have already been shared. Instead, I will conclude by offering the gratitude of Staffordshire County Council to Ian for his contribution as a county councillor over 13 years, and to his family, particularly Kay, for the elegant support she and they gave to him doing his work. He is gone. We will miss him.
Thank you, Leader. Will all members now please stand for a minute's silence to Mr. Ian Lawson? Councillor Alan White, will you move consideration of your statement, please?
I move the statement of the Leader of Council, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Staffordshire, item 1, Staffordshire means back to business. Oral update. Councillor David Smith.
Chairman, could I take this opportunity of thanking very, very much the county team for working with me on a £20 million investment in my division, which may, without their support, have been lost. And so thank you very much to the county team for the work that they've done, and hope that we're able to bring it to a successful conclusion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ashad Assar.
Thank you, Chairman. With the heightened increase of energy prices, and according to a recent study carried out by the Federation of Small Businesses on behalf of the British industry, it's been noted that electricity and gas prices have increased by a minimum of 145% to over 258% and more for most small businesses. Many small businesses say they're on the brink of collapse. Small businesses owners in particular are struggling under the weight of multiple crises, often without the resource of financial cushions to see them through. The hospitality sector in particular is facing an unusually challenging environment as the cost of living crisis hits them from both sides. Just as their energy costs are spiralling and their interest costs rise, their customers are cutting spending on non-essential items such as eating out. New figures released by the Insolvency Service show pubs, bars and restaurants have been the worst affected, being from both sides by the cost of living crisis. In data recently shared by audit, tax and advisory firm Mazars, the numbers of insolvencies went up by 72% up to August 31st from last year. Will the County Council, working with its boroughs and districts, intervene to offer these businesses support to save jobs and livelihoods of the people who are affected in small businesses in Staffordshire? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Pert, please.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, good morning. I wanted to pick up specifically the point regarding Pets at Home headquarters. Because in reality, whilst that's being built out, The residents in that area have taken a huge amount of additional traffic and congestion in the area. Whilst that's been done, I just wanted to say thank you to them, because I know it's been a big ask for them, particularly when you then take into account the other works that are going to go on in that area, with HS2 coming, with the A34 Stone Road and Homecroft works, and equally the Beaconside and Redhill Roundabout. That's a contract value about £5 million, and they're having to lift the road by about 2 metres. But I specifically wanted to pick that up and say thank you to residents, because this Pets at Home building is fundamentally important, because it's brought in an investment of £120 million into Stafford and into Staffordshire. The building has been delivered on time by the developer Stoford. It is going to bring in, it's going to be operational by the end of this year, which is a huge achievement from everyone involved. It will create 750 jobs at the start of all levels across supply chain, IT, finance, management. It will be Pets at Home's European headquarters. At peak, they intend to employ 1,200 people and equally have apprenticeships and learning in-house, all sorts of things. So their credentials in terms of job development are huge. But not only that, they have built a building which is with high-efficiency fabric to reduce their energy costs. They're using air source heat pumps. They've got a provision for solar PV on the roof. They're using low LED lighting. So all of this has come together as a package, which is acceptable in terms of building, but also delivering huge numbers of jobs. But what it does demonstrate is that Stafford is an attractive place to live, work and thrive. It's an investment that, between private and public sector, has seen within the borough nearly £250 million worth of inward investment. It demonstrates also that our people are keen to work and work hard. Our unemployment levels are at 2.4% versus the national average at 3.8%. So in terms of Stafford, Stafford is firmly open for business with a balanced, well-educated workforce, and soon we'll have a new Institute of Technology. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Gillian Pardesi, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, it occurs to me last time we were in the chamber, I asked 2 questions on the back to business item. I was assured by Councillor Alan White that I would receive a reply from Councillor Philip White, and unfortunately, correct me if I'm wrong, I have received a reply from neither. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Oates, please. No? Okay. Councillor Saeed Hussain, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Undoubtedly, there are so many good news stories in there. Mr. Chairman, I just would like to particularly draw attention to the Honourable Cabinet Member. What my constituents and nearby as well are facing regarding some pre-planning application advice. And our observation shows our partners, other district and borough councillors, are taking these facilities from our residents. They're not getting any pre-planning application advice. Mr. Chairman, I would like to mention that why this pre-planning application is so important for thriving for the small businesses. And we all know behind every small businesses, there are so many stories. It's worth knowing. Pre-planning application advice, Mr. Chairman, used to cost about £47.54 or below 100. Now, if they want to go for a new venture, they have to apply for the full phase planning applications, but there is no guarantee they will get it or not. So basically, in terms of putting £54 or below £100, they are looking at to expand a new project about £400 or £500. And bear in mind that they just weathered the storm in the last COVID. And I would sincerely and very humbly ask the cabinet member to look into this matter with our partners and wherever possible. And we are, as a county council, we are also a planning authority as well. So I would welcome any way forward advice, and I hope we can give some breathing space to the small businesses. And not only so small businesses, Mr. Chairman, this pre-planning application advice also affecting people who wants to build some extensions. And this is also supporting our accommodations problem. And also, when they're doing some small buildings, it creates jobs as well. So I would urge the County Council's cabinet member to look into the matter and give us things. And I don't want to go through in the business about 2.4% growth and all this, what's going on in Westminster. This is well above my pay grade. But I would like to think locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stein. Councillor Steve Sweeney, please.
That's caused some problem. Thank you for this. It always gives me an opportunity to go on about the town deal funding does this thing. And the second paragraph on the bottom is talking about the Chatterley Valley Business Park going on. Now, this was made possible by town deal funding to Newcastle Borough Council. The Borough Council put £3.6 million into this out of town deal funding that the Conservative government gave them. The County Council has also put money into it. It's closed the viability gap. Labour Party, for reasons best known to me, although the person who did oppose it is no longer the group leader in the Labour Party, that might have something to do with it, but they did oppose it. But it closed the viability gap, and it gives us something like 1,700 new, well-paid jobs for the Borough of Newcastle, just outside Kisgrove. It's absolutely fantastic. And it just goes to show what a bit of seed funding can bring into the area. Absolutely superb result. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Greatrix, please.
Chairman, I hope I've got something of a point of information for Councillor Afsar, who asked about the assistance given to small businesses. I work across in Warwickshire with a number of small businesses, and although he's made the comment about what is the County Council doing, there is a national scheme, and that national scheme came into place on the 1st of October. Broadly speaking, for supply of energy, i.e. Electricity and gas, the subsidy is already applied. There's a tariff subsidy that's being offered to all businesses, and that's automatically applied, and that will run for 6 months. Obviously, it's not a full support for the amount of increase that businesses are getting, but that cushion will help for 6 months.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Sutherland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't really going to speak on this particular subject, but just listening to some of the comments that we've heard this morning, I think we've got to reflect on the, if you like, the backdrop of what we're faced, and I think it's the perfect storm. The war in Ukraine, worldwide shortages, labour shortages in certain areas, and inflations that many of us have not seen before. So for me, and I'm delighted it's number one on the leaders' agenda, it is critical that we continue to support medium, large, and small businesses in Staffordshire, because without that, we can't control our destiny. So I wanted just to make that point. We need to reflect on what we're doing and the way that we're going about it. So for me, fully endorse this, and I'm delighted that it's number one on the agenda today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Philip White, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So a few points that have been made there that I'll answer, and then I'll make 1 or 2 points of my own. So firstly, to Councillor Pardesi, if you haven't received a response to a question that you asked in the last council meeting, I apologise, and we will make sure that you have it forthwith. Regarding the points Councillor Afsar's made about business insolvencies, this is something that we covered in a previous Staffordshire Means Back to Business update. The levels of insolvency have risen nationally. The data in terms of county by county is somewhat difficult to extract, but the numbers have returned to where they were pre-pandemic, which is something that would be expected as part of the life cycle of businesses. Some businesses do become insolvent
We will watch that. We'll be particularly mindful of business insolvencies in Staffordshire if we do see a rise in those. But that is something which is a return to a pre-pandemic situation. Councillor Greatrix has very kindly covered the point about energy support, but I'll make a broader point, which is here in Staffordshire, we need to do the things that we can directly influence and make a difference on ourselves, rather than trying to duplicate things that governments are doing, or indeed doing the things that businesses should properly do for themselves. And our Back to Business scheme, which has been running since the beginning of the pandemic and continues to run as Staffordshire Means Business, provides a wide range of support in the areas where we can do that relevantly locally, either as the County Council or with partners, and we're committed to continuing to do that. Key amongst that, in terms of new initiatives, and it's not been raised by anyone, but I will raise it because it's really important, is our jobs brokerage scheme. We're very fortunate in Staffordshire that we continue to have exceptionally low levels of unemployment, both versus the regional and the national averages. This has been the case for many years, and it continues to be the case. That is good for people in our county, with all of the challenges that we face that probably people in this chamber are worried about. We're not insulated from it here. We all understand this, around the cost of living, the global and national challenges that we see around inflation, and about the impact of President Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. We all feel that impact. And having a job is one of the best ways of making sure that you are able to influence your future, irrespective of what is happening in the national and the global economy. And in Staffordshire, we have huge success with that. But our businesses need people to be able to conduct their operations and to grow. And we have 20,000 vacancies in Staffordshire at the moment. And linking people, whether they're people who are out of work, of whom we do have some, or whether they're people who are looking for a better job and a step on in their career, is incredibly important for the people and for the businesses. And our jobs brokerage scheme is a good example of something we can do locally here in Staffordshire that sits in between what the Department for Work and Pensions do through the job centres and what businesses do themselves, to link people locally with businesses locally, and crucially, where it's necessary, and it increasingly is in our economy, where skills are at a premium if you're going to be employable, linking them with a skills package as well. It's rolling out over the autumn. I encourage colleagues to take a look at it and promote it in their areas with businesses and with people who might be looking for work or to improve the job that they're in. It's a great example of what we do here in our county, which is the things that are relevant locally rather than duplicating things that other people are properly doing. Thank you, Chair.
Lead for Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to Councillor Pardesi, first up, apologies for not responding to you. It's clear in the minutes that the response was due to you, and we will get that to you as soon as we can after this meeting. I just want to turn our attention to the point that Councillor Hussain made about planning advice. We've come together as a group of local authorities in Staffordshire, districts, boroughs and the County Council, and the leaders of those organisations, to see what we can do to make the experience of people using council services more efficient. Most people across the county, when they're thinking about council services, just refer to the council. They don't know whether they're talking about a parish council, a district council, a borough council or a county council. What we want to do is make it as smooth and easy for them to engage with the public sector authorities as they possibly can. And we're doing work at the moment through the Leaders Board, which will make that a more efficient and more effective service for those people that use it. I think the thing that is clear with this report is that no matter what's going on around the country, and one or two of us may have observed other politicians in other places running around with their tails on fire, here in Staffordshire, we are seeing to it that we have calm, consistent and efficient delivery of support for the businesses that need us. Councillor White has set out very clearly what we're doing, and I commend this report to all of you. And please do get out there and tell the businesses in your divisions what support is available to them so that they can make use of it and continue to grow and thrive through very difficult times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next item, approval of Staffordshire County Council's community learning procurement arrangements, 2023-2027. Councillor Philip White, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wouldn't want to let this item pass without paying tribute to the excellent work that our community learning team do, which engages with thousands of people in our county, focused in particular on adult learning courses that are geared towards functional skills, so mathematics, which we will talk about a little later on in this agenda, literacy, but also work readiness skills as well. It's a really important activity that the council undertakes that sometimes flies a little bit under the radar. We had a huge challenge during the pandemic where we moved all of our courses online at the drop of a hat, and we kept most of our learners engaged, and I'm really proud of the work we did there. But what we have done post the pandemic, and this agenda item speaks to the procurement that now follows on from that, is we looked at taking the best of that, so that online learning, the convenience that comes with that and the accessibility, but blending that with the face-to-face learning that people value, to make sure that going forwards we've got an offer that works as well as possible for as many people as possible, so that they engage with these courses that can be of real value to them. It's important that it's noted here, and important both in terms of the process that procurement is noted, but also important to note that excellent work that this council quietly gets on with, which helps thousands of people every year. Thank you very much, Chair.
Item 3, Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 1, 22-23. Councillor Mrs Charles-Atkins.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. What progress has been made in filling the posts which we need to deliver social care reform? And if no progress has been made in filling those posts, what is the strategy that the county is going to adopt to ensure that we do have people in those posts assessing people, etc.? And what sort of messages are we getting, if any, from the new Secretary of State for Health about both the implementation date and the funding for social care reform? Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak before I call the Cabinet member? You're pressing the wrong button that you've pressed for Mark DeVille. Okay, Councillor Jessel, please.
Which one? That one. Sorry, beg your pardon, Chairman. I'd spread myself out a little in Mark's absence. My apologies, Chairman. It normally is a lot more cosy on this bench. Thank you very much for that question. In terms of the adult social care reforms, we are working on the assumption that the current timetable still stands for implementation. In terms of the financial support, we anticipate that will be made known when we know our next year's financial allocation, which tends to be our Christmas present. It tends to come, it should be the beginning of December, but it does tend to be just before Christmas. But we are putting in plans on the assumption that the timetable is as we know it at the moment. In terms of recruitment and retention, this is a national problem, but we are trying to tackle it on a local basis. There has recently been a survey of people who work both within the local authority and in private contractors in social care. And I think from the first feedback I've had, it's heartening to know how many of the people working in that industry, the caring industry as I call it, how much they enjoy the work, how satisfying they find the work. But there are some key issues. One is career progression for those who want it. Obviously finance, you know, most people work for money, you know, and that is a key thing. But we have as a local authority, particularly with people who provide care in the home, we have increased the rates of pay more than most. So we recognise that transport costs, etc., have risen. And obviously you may recall prior to last winter, we did trial a number of initiatives. One of them was to encourage providers to exchange their caseload so that they cut down on their travelling. you have providers who crisscross over the county. So there are things like that. But one of the things that we are working on is that career path to make it easy and attractive for people to come into the industry and for those who want to actually progress through that career. But also, one of the things I'm quite keen on, often people retire from the NHS when they're in their early 50s, they've got their full pension, is actually we must be aware that there are people across the whole age range who are really ideal for working in this industry. If you've worked in the NHS with the pressures of that, I think we should make it attractive for those more mature people to bring their professional skills and their life skills into their industry. So I think there's a lot of things that we are planning to do, and there will be a paper coming later on this financial year on the plans that we put in place. I think we're on the same page here, and we are as proactive as we possibly can. But I think one of the things I would say, Chairman, the NHS often shoots itself in the foot by saying, you know, you get a lot of publicity, how awful it is working in the NHS, how much pressure, etc., etc. No wonder they find it difficult to recruit. People who work in social care in Staffordshire are amazingly positive about their role, the satisfaction that they get. And I think that's a message that we need to portray, because that will encourage people to come and join. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I just remind members, we have a new computer system. Everyone has an allocated seat, and that you press your own button. Else it makes it very difficult for officers to let myself and the Vice Chair know who wants to speak. And also, once you press your button, you cannot now cancel it yourself. Only the officer or me can cancel it, so I will know you're speaking. Thank you. Councillor Ian Parry, please.
I shall have to go to the office.
It's automatic. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I just want to take the opportunity really to expand a little bit on paragraph 3 and to appraise members of the latest situation. We've published, and it's on the public website now, the Cabinet Papers for Wednesday, which include the Q2 update for the Council's Integrated Performance Report and Budget Report. And so, if I could explain to Council that the situation from Q1, where we saw a 3.6 million net overspend, has increased to something now of a net 6 million overspend. And again, this is due to a number of factors. Inflation primarily, and we've at the beginning of the year developed an inflation reserve to use there, and a contingency to support the transformation of children's services. What we've seen in children's services is that transformation is more complex and it's taken longer than we might otherwise have forecast. And secondly, the number of children with complex needs coming into the system and expensive complex needs has also impacted on that budget. We started the year in terms of setting the council budget and medium-term financial plan with a series of known unknowns, if you like. We knew, obviously, the war in Ukraine would have some effect, but what effect that would have. Never before, I think, well, certainly in the recent past, and certainly within my memory, and probably even within Philip Atkins' memory, have we ever been affected by macro and geopolitical factors as we are right now? Not just those worldwide supply chain problems, inflation and interest rates across the world, but here in the UK, and our Treasury advisors at the beginning of the year forecast that potentially interest rates might steadily rise up to 2025 to 1.5%. And a few months later, look where we are now. And clearly, you know, that is something which was a complete unknown to us in terms of what would the movement be in interest rates. Inflation too, where, you know, we were looking at potentially 2.5% inflation, grown to double-digit inflation, and even more seriously across the authority, different types of inflation depending on the goods. So, for example, in construction, we're seeing a much higher price increases than in general consumer price index type goods as well. So on top of that, we've seen you know, the demand profile in adult social care and in children's services shifting and becoming having more pressure upon our resources. We have taken the precaution, therefore, of having reserves dedicated to these areas, particularly inflation, because given that inflation could simply wipe out the investments that we were making, particularly in highways, for example, could have got wiped out by inflation. We took the precaution of having an inflation reserve quite early on and other contingencies to be able to do that. Nevertheless, there's still good news. We're still investing in our highways, an extra £63 million in our infrastructure, £50 million extra in highways, plus supporting that with an inflation reserve so that investment stays solid. More investment in jobs through things like Chatterley Valley, for example, more investment in new schools, more investment in our services. Health and social care gets an extra 17 million, families and children an extra 4 million, plus the 6 million that we've put into the transformation, and 5.5 million into the economy. So this is a council with sound financial resilience, even though we've got that increase, that pressure on our budget now of around 6 million, it's still within scope for us. Sit down. Still within scope for us, so it's the longer term that is more of a pressure than the current budget. Thank you for your forbearance, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 4, Treasury Management Report for the year ending 31st of March 22. Councillor Ian Parry.
Joan, I didn't press the button then. I think it was an error. But I'm very happy to talk for 20 minutes on the Treasury Management. If anybody's interested. It's all about interest rates, folks. It's all about security. It's all about interest rates.
Thank you. Review of the agreement for provision of adult social care assessment and case management and occupational therapy in Staffordshire. Item 6, contract for the supply of electricity and associated services. Call off from YPO Framework 791. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an extremely volatile market, and it's one that doesn't just hit this council, it hits the whole of our community. It's hitting us all. We're all looking at our energy bills, and we're all looking at what horrendous situations we have to face. And so, Chairman, there are some things which we are able to do as far as the use of electricity is concerned. I'm very, very interested to see that some energy companies, I see Octopus are one, are providing daytime, low-cost services at times when energy would normally be going to Earth. I'm not absolutely certain, but I think at the Conservative conference, ERDF said that they were discontinuing the special rates. What does that do to all of the people who've got storage radiators, use overnight power, and all the sort of things which they do? I think that we as a council need to explore how we can help our community, not just us as a council, for how that we can manage our energy purchases, but what advice can we give to the community? There is so much that we as members and we as the council can do to support the community. The community has got its back to the wall. Now let's do something about helping them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Saeed Hussain, please.
Well, just very quickly, would like to mention about that in the news we are hearing so many things, likely, more than likely, unlikely, or highly likely there should be a power cut. And my concern about when we mention our constituents in the community, like 83 years old, 95 years old, and they need constant use of electricity, special equipments they use to do their blood circulations and other issues as well. So can I just ask the cabinet member, do we have any contingency plan in terms of likely or unlikely event of blackout or something? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor John Francis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a complete shambles at the minute as far as our energy goes. For too long, Western Europe has depended on Russia to supply its gas needs. I worked for the power generation and distribution industry many, many years ago, and I went to a meeting in London 30 plus years ago where energy strategy was talked about. GEC at the time were leaders in generation and distribution in this country, although it's all been sold mostly to French EDF, which is government-owned, and the profits go to the French government. And there's not one government since the war, after the war to about 1955-6, there was a strategic strategy for power generation and distribution in this country. That included coal, gas, oil, and nuclear. And we built more nuclear stations than any other country in the world in the 1950s and early 60s, which we've allowed to deteriorate, and all our skill base in building those stations does not exist anymore. We've got to beg, steal and borrow other countries to build our nuclear stations, which is absolutely ludicrous, considering we invented nuclear energy power distribution. It beggars the question that Centrica were allowed to close the Rough gas field up in the North Sea, which had 3 months worth of stock in at the time, which is now depleted. So we haven't got a backup there. Base load power stations are allowed to close, coal-fired, which provided energy in cold weather and were demolished. We relied on gas-fired power stations, smaller units, to provide that base load. And we've got a problem there, a serious issue. So there's no government since the 1950s, not one of any colour, has had a strategy for power generation and distribution. And this is where we are now. We find ourselves in the right pickle. I fear for the residents of Staffordshire and across the whole of the UK with this energy crisis. It's not fair on our people that we've come to this. And I'm afraid, as I've alluded to, various governments have let the country down. I don't know where we're going from here. As I said earlier, I ran a company in the 70s with interest rates at 24% and inflation at 27%. And it was damn difficult, I'll tell you, to pay the wage bill every month. Really hard. And that's the way we're heading at the minute. And it's all down to energy. And energy across the world, and as has been alluded to by Ian, interest rates are now climbing across the world. And we can't control it. It's not this country's under this country's control to control those. It's international. Whatever happens in New York impacts on London and Singapore and Tokyo and vice versa. So, Mr. Chairman, we are in a hell of a pickle, and I think we as a county council and our councillors are doing a fantastic job to try and mitigate this problem. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Gillian Padesi, please.
Chair. Well, we can't blame Putin for everything, Chair. How about this for a suggestion to help our communities? We put an end to corporate greed. The greedy, fat shareholders of energy companies who are becoming millionaires while people in our communities are becoming poorer and sitting in the cold.
Thank you. Please, Councillor Francis, you've had your say. Councillor Colin Greatrix, please.
Chairman, you've been remarkably liberal with the application of this heading, which is about joining up with a Yorkshire Electricity and Associated Services contract, which I do want to return to. The one comment I would make, I made it earlier, I work in Warwickshire with small businesses and I'm aware of dealing with brokers. I echo the comments of Councillor Smith. There are some various contracts available to businesses. A lot of media attention is about what's happening to residents and the cap. Well, the cap doesn't exist in businesses. There are some various different contracts, and there are, as Councillor Smith said, options on different times and different tariffs at different days of the week and times of day. So I do think that businesses can be helped in that. And so to address this particular agenda item, this is something that the MTFS group have discussed in the past about how are the local authorities getting together to see the best deals that are available through corporate purchase. And it's something that, if I was to quote John Francis, Councillor John Francis, I'd probably say we've been banging on about it for some while. And we have been, and I'm glad to see that we're actually doing something now which is showing some muscle and some power. And hopefully, I know Councillor Wilson's very keen on the idea of the county working with its family group of districts and boroughs, and for that matter, schools and academies. And wherever possible, if this deal is something that we can work through the Yorkshire Purchasing Group to give some benefit to other organisations, I'd like to see that as a knock-on. I'd like to see that whatever deal we can provide for ourselves, we might be able to corporately offer to districts and boroughs and other businesses that might benefit.
Thank you. We may have gone off script a bit, but as it's a public meeting, it's nice when people do have a debate and we'll let the public out there know what we actually think. So I think the lead for council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when Councillor DeVille said he was not able to make this meeting, and his item was contract for the supply of electricity and associated services call-off from the Yorkshire Purchasing Organisation Framework 791, I thought, walk in the park. Right. Nobody's going to answer a question about a framework contract because it's all too dull. But it turns out it's opened up a whole debate, and your latitude has been gratefully received by many councillors in the chamber who've indulged themselves with the opportunity. When Councillor Smith talks to the cost of living situation, I think you'll find on the Leader's Statement, item 12, there's a website, www.staffordshire.gov.uk/here to help, which Councillor Wilson is leading on in particular, making sure that our communities around the county have the help that they need to get us through this. In addition to that, Councillor Wilson hosted a seminar for all councillors about what they can do in their local areas, and I attended that, and I think it was an excellent session where councillors shared ideas and best practice about what they can do to help their communities, and thank you for your efforts on that, Councillor Wilson. I think it was well received. Councillor Hussain talked about contingency planning for electricity supply. I'm assured we do have contingency plans in place to make sure that the lights don't go out, but perhaps we need to bring candles to the next council meeting just in case. Councillor Francis, yes, the electricity market is indeed very complicated, to the extent that the University of Birmingham, I'm aware, has a professor whose role is the energy market. It is that complicated. And decisions not to invest in electricity generation over the years has caused a problem. That's undoubtedly the case, and we're living through it now. Councillor Pardesi, clearly a very political statement, illustrating your views of how you think the free market should be working. My view of the free market is that it actually does engender aspiration, emulation, so that people can stand on their own 2 feet and look after themselves. There are circumstances where people do need a little bit of help, and that's where the state steps in to provide that safety net when people cannot help themselves. And you've seen the government is providing that safety net as a consequence of the collision of circumstances that we find ourselves in today. It's not for me to rehearse those collision of circumstances here this morning. Everybody knows what they are, and it's already been said during the course of the debates this morning. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that concludes the conversation about the call-off of the YPO Framework 7, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Item 7, Multiply, National Numeracy Programme. Councillor Ashad Asfar, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the news about the National Numeracy Programme, especially in the current climate we live in today, where the ability to understand and use maths in daily life, home and work will play a vital role in improving household finances and helping the children with homework. Could I please ask where the programme is to be targeted, age groups, etc., and will employers have access to this programme to put their workforces through to better their numeracy skills and hopefully lead into employee retention? Thank you.
Councillor Graham Hutton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the lack of ability in the population regarding numeracy as well as literacy is quite high, I believe, well over 20%. And I really welcome this initiative. But I'd like to ask the Member of Cabinet whether budgeting is part of this numeracy programme, because I really do believe that better budgeting for people it should be part of numeracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saeed Hussain, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nationally, we heard from the independent statistics from National Numeracy that the UK economy is losing about £20 billion because of the lack of adult numeracy. So every effort is certainly welcome. Can I just ask the Cabinet member, can we actively encourage the local provider to ask their users to enroll with the National Numeracy website, which is charitable organizations, and they do encourage the people to carry on with their numeracies. They do, first of all, assessment, then they do the test, and it's a lifelong skill, and they should carry on as well. And you'll be happy to know that I'm also a member of these famous organizations as well. So they're doing nothing but getting the people to come along, to shun their math anxiety, to do these things. So can I just ask again whether is it possible to ask our local providers to look into those websites and make it easy for their users to log into this and do nothing but the very best for our local economy as well. Thank you.
Councillor Philip White, please.
So although there's been some discussion today about national government policies and whether we think they're the right or the wrong thing, it's good to see that there is cross-party support in this chamber for this excellent initiative. And I echo the comments of Councillor Afsar and Councillor Hussain and indeed Councillor Hutton regarding this. It's an excellent programme. I'll try and answer the questions that have been raised as I just provide a little bit more information about the scheme, but I would direct members to the Cabinet papers from our 21st of September meeting, which is very detailed in terms of the workings of this programme. So you can get chapter and verse there. But broadly speaking, it's aimed at adults aged 19 plus. It is intended to get people more involved in numeracy, and at the most fundamental level, that is courses on things like household finance, budget planning, simple numeracy, that you can pick up and put down as courses, so there's very little pressure to become more involved than you want to. You can do as little as you want, but you can also do as much as you want. So the broad aim of the programme is to encourage as many adults as possible who have not got a level 2 qualification in mathematics, that's GCSE maths, to pursue one. But it's getting people in at whatever level they're comfortable with, help them with their basic numeracy and budgeting, but then move them on through to get those qualifications that can make them more employable, but also go further if they want to. So if there is a particular numeracy skill that they need for a job or for progression in their employment, to help with that as well. It's a really wide-ranging programme that is spot on, and we'll be running it in Staffordshire over the next 3 years. The provision that we have is county-wide, to your point about where will it land, so it will be everywhere, including in East Staffordshire, with a really good broad range of providers addressing all of the different segments of our population within the adult population that might want some additional numeracy skills. Hopefully that answers everyone's questions. If there are any questions I haven't managed to answer, please do have a word with me and I'll be delighted to follow it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, staying well. It is a debate on staying well, not a general debate on the National Health Service. Councillor Paul Northcote, please.
It's my one that's on, I think.
Okay, I'll try my best. Oh, it's on now, yeah? Okay. Okay, am I? All right, try again. As a leader in public health, we need to do everything and want to do everything we can to encourage people to take the steps to look after their health, Mr. Chairman. For example, during this month, we're running the Stoptober campaign, which we've in the past have delivered 1,200 people to take part in this scheme to help quit smoking as part of the overall aims of Stoptober. Getting the flu jab and the COVID booster, obviously, as soon as you're eligible to get that, it's a good way to protect yourself and more vulnerable in our communities in winter. We find ourselves approaching the season now where the demands and constraints of healthcare provision, as is probably is most greatest, prevention measures that we take now will have ultimately an impact on the need for more hospital and medical interventions treating the progressive impacts from both the nature of the flu season combined with COVID. However, we still need to push the messages home in our respective divisions and beyond is the best way for staying well, is to obtain a vaccination for both, as I've mentioned, for the most vulnerable high-risk groups. And don't forget that the frontline workers such as NHS staff and social workers. Having that extra layer of protection should provide not only the enhanced protection levels, but importantly reduce the severe effects should one become infected. As we are some time now living with COVID since the discovery of the emerging strains of COVID, the vaccinations and of course now living alongside COVID in our everyday lives. Of course, many of us will maybe have become a little fatigued with the national and local campaigns that think that this has resulted in a lower take-up recently in some age groups. However, some groups, such as the 80+, has been high with the very first vaccinations that were offered. Right now, it looks like the uptake of the autumn booster is around 47% for the 80+ group and 36% for the 65 to 79 age group. So clearly, we cannot afford to be complacent as COVID and seasonal flu is upon us. If we, for example, Mr. Chairman, use the analogy of a motor car, to keep it functioning at its full level, we need to keep the levels of the engine topped up. We need to make sure that the brakes are, the brake fluids topped up and also with water to keep it going and running. If this can be transferred to our bodies, we need to do that equally in topping up our protection levels by keeping up to date with the offer of available vaccinations, especially the boosters when they're offered. We've heard of some interesting experiences from residents that have experienced so far some strange anomalies of the NHS system, and I'm not here to decry the NHS. However, some people have been getting 3 reminders after they've received their vaccination, and some have had none. So clearly there seems to be some work needing to be done there. But those that have not received any communication can turn to the National Booking Service or search for walk-in clinics in their own area choosing which to be found on the NHS Find a Walking Coronavirus 19 vaccination site on the associated web page. This is obviously in addition to the walk-in clinics, Mr Chairman, that are situated in high areas of need. So, to conclude, Mr Chairman, it's incumbent for us to continue to raise the profile and importance of this, to help our residents and families, friends, and obviously ourselves to keep healthy, fit and well this winter. Thank you, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Charlotte Atkins, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Mindful of the issues around communication, I publicised a walk-in COVID booster session in Leek 2 weeks ago, and I'm sorry I did, because well over 300 people turned up and people queued for 2.5 hours in the rain. I know that people in the south of the county won't understand this, but we do have rain in Leek. Obviously, the Midlands Partnership NHS Trust didn't think that we might have inclement weather, so they queued all the way outside the fire station to the main road. One gentleman, aged 87, asked if he could have a seat. No, the fire station is full. Now, the Midlands Partnership NHS Trust, rather than sorting out this shambles, has cancelled the walk-in centre for October. Yet they run Leek Hospital. And Leek Hospital is completely empty apart from the MIU at weekends. So why aren't they using it? Meantime, GPs are beginning to gear up to provide both vaccinations, both for flu and for COVID. That's great. But there is absolutely no coordination between the Midlands Partnership NHS Trust and the primary care network. Surprisingly for some people, not everyone is able to jump in their cars and go from Leek to Buxton, Milton, Stoke-on-Trent for their COVID jab. We do need a walk-in centre in a town of 21,000, and I urge the Midlands Partnership NHS Trust to get their act together, and also the primary care network to communicate better with their patients to make sure that they get their jabs in good time. This shambles does not encourage people to do the right thing and to get protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Derry Cookfield, please.
Can I just say, Mr Chairman, I've had mine. I've had my flu injection in that arm and I've had my booster in that arm, right? And the organisation within my area, Silverdale, it's nothing like what's been said about Leek. The organisation is absolutely fantastic, right? You have an appointment and you go there at a certain time, right? And the people in Silverdale, right, within that area, right, haven't got a problem. Because the moment you walk in, they ask you straight away, do you want both injections? One in each arm, which we haven't got a problem. I don't know why they've got a problem in Leek, because I know they get a lot of rain up there, and they probably think the people in Leek probably can afford umbrellas, where people in Silverdale really can't afford them, you know, which does make a bit of a difference. But I mean, I'm pleased, right, that the government, right, has paid for all these injections. And we've got to emphasise on that, right? They don't just come willy-nilly. They're a serious thing, these injections, because it does look after your health. And I encourage anybody, right, or anybody in here as well, if you haven't had it, go and get it, because I don't want you to pass anything on to myself. Just the same, I wouldn't want to pass anything on to you, right? So at the end of the day, right, it doesn't take a second to have an injection in your arm. It doesn't hurt, or a lot of people try to make out. It's so easy. Walk in, walk out. The assistants that give it, very, very nice people. And when you walk in, you just say, look, I'm a bit of a wimp. Don't hurt me, will you? You know, and you get away with it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh.
Thank you. I think we should have Derek on our website advertising it to everybody in the county. Councillor Anne Edgeler, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Seeing as I'm the partner governor to Midland Partnership Foundation Trust, I will take your concerns, Councillor Acton, to to the associate people. Thank you.
Councillor Johnny McMahon, please. Dr. Johnny McMahon.
I just want to say a few quick words about general public health advice. And everybody knows the detail of this, so I won't go into it. But I think there's three things that are worth saying and worth getting over to people. The first is now that there's good evidence that it's never too late. It doesn't matter how old you are, it's worth starting to do stuff. Second is we reap the benefit quicker than is often thought. You think if you eat healthier now, it'll take decades for things to improve. That's not the case. Things get better and your life gets better quicker than many people think. But finally, and I think this is really the important thing for me, Professor Sir Muir Gray, who's Professor of Public Health at Oxford, who's quite a character, I have to say, is running a campaign called Living Longer and Better. None of us know how long we've got in this world. None of us, no matter what we might do. But this is about the quality of life. And I think that's something we need to get over, that living a life whereby we eat better, we exercise a bit, we do more, we engage more, improves the quality of our life. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
And can I thank my colleague, Councillor Northcott and Councillor McMahon, for putting the broader public health picture, but also the detail behind the COVID. In terms of, I am aware from a discussion with Councillor Atkins a few days ago about the issue in Leek, and I am aware that there are some anomalies in the NHS system at the moment, and we will raise that with the NHS. Obviously, we're not involved in organising it, but I think that feedback, it's incumbent upon us to do that. Obviously, what's happening in Silverdale, where you can get your vaccinations at the same time, would be wonderful if it was replicated across the county, and I think that's what the NHS should aspire to do. I know from my personal experience, we live in the same house, my partner's been given one web link that says he can go to the Pirelli Stadium in Burton. I've been given a different web link and I can't. So yes, thank you for raising it, Councillor Atkins, and certainly we will raise that. But I think in terms of public health, we as an authority, as a public health authority, are doing what we can, but that's only a small part of the equation. It's down to the individual. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to our families and loved ones, to do the right thing. I love the comparison with a motor car. You know, we look after our cars so that they run well and run in good condition. We need to do the same for our bodies. If we abuse our bodies, we will reap the rewards, which often are very tragic. We do need to ensure that we look after ourselves, we stay physically and mentally active. It's not other people's responsibility, it's not the NHS responsibility, it's ours. And if we can do what we can do, but individuals do what they can do in partnership, we can improve, not necessarily the longevity of life, but as Councillor McMahon has said, it's the quality of life that is important. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. As you've just mentioned in Pirelli Stadium, I was with the High Sheriff, Ben Robinson, the other day. He told me that over 400,000 people have now been vaccinated at that stadium. It's a wonderful number, and really it just shows how hard he works in the community himself. Lead for Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Atkins, for raising that point. It's not acceptable that people are having to wait in the rain, and I know that there's a number of councillors in the chamber who will look into that for you. I'm very grateful for Councillor Dr. Johnny McMahon raising the general public health advice. Across Staffordshire, the healthy life expectancy is not where it should be. That's the amount of life that you live before something goes wrong. It was 64 before something drops off. It's coming down, in part because of COVID. As John Francis will attest, bits have dropped off him all over the place, and not paying attention. And it's fairly miserable. I've been following Johnny McMahon's healthy life advice for some considerable period of time, and it's worked for me. I'm only 27, and you can see that... No? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. For those who remember old cars, it's like buying a Moscovich or a Lada. You knew it wouldn't last very long. OK, next item, enhanced home care service. Cabinet Member, Councillor Julia Jessel, please.
Chairman, as recruitment and retention of care staff has been raised before, this is an example of an initiative that the local authority is undertaking to address a particular issue in the north of the county. That's where it will start, but hopefully it will be implemented across the county, and that is to have an enhanced service model. This will work in collaboration with existing home care providers, not in competition. And one of the things that we are very keen to do is to encourage people to come and join this service who aren't already in the caring industry. What is happening at the moment, because of demand, the Home First service, which helps to discharge patients from hospital, is under a huge demand, and there are difficulties handing over the care package to home care providers. And therefore, we're using the Home First service on occasions as provider of last resort. This can have a detrimental effect on the speed of discharge from hospital, and this is what we want to prevent. This service, we went through a number of options in appraising the best way to deliver this, and it was decided that actually an in-house service would be the best model. So that's what we're in the process of recruiting to. They will be staffed with the skills to take over from the Home First service, but to do some reablement that could actually be used as a step up from the community, which in the future could perhaps prevent, where appropriate, admissions to hospital. So this is a new initiative. The service will be based, as I say, as an enhanced model and a strength-based practice, which is helping people to become independent again and to be able to live their lives in their homes in a successful way. So this is an initiative. It will start predominantly in the north of the county, as those who live in that part of the world, and we do know it rains throughout the whole of Staffordshire, not just in North Staffordshire, but geographically, it's a diverse and geographically spread population, and it is an area where we have had difficulties, and we're hoping that this service will alleviate those strains and not have that negative impact on potentially slowing discharges from hospital. Thank you very much, Chairman, but I thought members would like to know that actually we are coming up with initiatives and solutions to avoid some of the problems that we know, if we do nothing, we will encounter. Thank you. Thank you.
Next item, hearing aid rule changes. Councillor Johnny McMahon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Some 30-odd years ago, I made an impromptu visit to see my father. At the time that I visited, his gardener of 10 years standing was in the garden. He took me down, and rather than just introduce me, he said, this is my son Johnny, introduce yourself, and then he walked away. The man had had hearing loss throughout his adolescence and adulthood, and he just got used to functioning without knowing people's names. And yet this man had worked for him for 10 years. When you can't hear, your world shrinks. And that episode has always been emblematic for me. Particularly now, with social isolation, agoraphobia, loss of confidence that people have post-lockdowns, sorting out people's hearing is more and more important than ever. And I'm delighted that the Integrated Care Board has made the decision such that all of us in Staffordshire, not just the south, but all of us, the north and the south, can get hearing aids for mild and moderate hearing loss. But it's more than just the fact that the world shrinks. It's more than just social isolation, albeit that leads to all sorts of problems, including depression and anxiety. The other thing it does is you're at risk when you're a pedestrian trying to cross the road, because you cross the road with your ears as well as your eyes. It's well recognized that those with hearing loss have increased risk of dementia. Now, given the prevalence of dementia in our community, that's really, really important. The other issue is that people are more prone to certain psychiatric illnesses if they've got hearing loss, particularly paranoid psychosis. So people make fun of those who've got hearing loss, and I don't mind that, and I make fun of myself sometimes. But actually, there's very significant morbidity or potential morbidity that sits behind hearing loss. And I'm delighted that this decision has been made. And I recognize the work that Charlotte Atkins has done over the years to improve things in the north, such that it's equitable with the south. But I also have to give particular thanks to Kath Perry. She was the Health and Care Scrutiny Chair at the time that this came up. She didn't accept what the North wanted to do, and she wrote to the Secretary of State. And since then, the ball has been rolling. It went from Kath to me as chair, and then Jeremy helped get us over the line. So there's been several of us in this chamber who've worked hard to get where we are. And I'm particularly grateful to that as one who's inherited my father's problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Councillor Kath Perry.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Johnny, Councillor McMahon, I'll put it right. And thank you also. I'm delighted to see this on the agenda and your leader statement, so thank you, Alan, for putting it on. It's long overdue. As Councillor McMahon's already said, several years ago it was a decision that was made by the then CCG in the north of the county that this was and it became a controversial issue at our meetings that we had. As Councillor McMahon has said, I wrote to the Secretary of State. That was it. Things move on, and so here we are now, today. I'd like to thank the Council, and in particular my successors to the chairmanship, Councillors McMahon and Councillor Pert, and also the committees of the scrutiny committees since my reign as chairman up to present day. For picking up the baton, which I can say, we're on a running race now, picking up the baton and running with it to such a great result. It's excellent to see this. It has been a long time coming, but we won the race for the people of the north of the county with equal access to all people throughout the county. So it's great news for Staffordshire. Thank you very much to all concerned, and thank you for the kind comments you made earlier on. Thank you.
Well done, Kath. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Perry, and thank you for all you did as chair. Mrs. Charlotte Atkins, please.
Chair, this is a welcome decision, but it has taken 7 long years. 7 long years to get this perverse decision reversed. I remember when they had two consultation meetings. One was held in Newcastle, one was held in Leek. And in both venues, the hearing loop didn't work. That's how determined they were to consult people properly. But what this has done is denied people who couldn't afford £3,000 for a pair of hearing aids 7 years of untold misery, ill health and isolation. And that's an absolute disgrace. Now, the Integrated Care Board tried to pretend that somehow this was based on clinical evidence. Well, how come then North Staffordshire Clinical Commissioning Group was the only one in the whole country that came to this conclusion? How did they do that? Was it vindictive? It was certainly perverse. And, you know, they said, oh, well, NICE came out with a new document in 2018. Yes, of course they did. But it only reinforced what everyone else knew already. And I want to pay tribute to a constituent of mine, Linda Parton, who is a hearing loss expert, who throughout these years has fed me with the clinical evidence absolutely clear, which shows that these hearing aids, digital hearing aids, are totally life-enhancing, as Councillor Johnny McMahon has specified. But what worries me is how can we believe that these perverse decisions are based on clinical evidence when this decision was so outrageous? You know, it was totally outrageous. And they still maintain it was based on clinical evidence. Well, it wasn't. And it wasn't even about saving money, but hundreds of people have suffered as a result. I keep on having people stopping me in the street, thanking me for helping with this campaign, because it was such an injustice. These are life-saving bits of equipment, and I think we had a workshop at the Health Overview Scrutiny Committee, and most of the CCGs left the room because actually they didn't want any part of it, and it was only North Staffordshire that made that decision, and they've robbed people of 7 years of active life. It's a disgrace.
Councillor Simon Tagg, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I had a 50-50 chance with the mic then. It could have been that one or this one. I didn't know which one it was. It's this one here, so I'll have to shuffle this way. I'd like to sort of echo some of the comments that have already been made. And I think we've had a postcode lottery, haven't we, in the county when it comes to, you know, these hearing aids. And I think since the North Staff CCG, as has been mentioned, stopped for most people with mild or moderate hearing loss in 2015. We've had that postcode lottery. I'm glad to see that's come to an end. I'm glad to see that part of the Staffordshire-wide clinical policy review has brought this to happen. And it's an issue I raised with Kath when she was chairman of the Health Scrutiny Committee way back, you know, in 2015, when residents had come to me from my division who were having issues with this. And for those with mild hearing loss, a hearing aid is vitally important to improve communications, relationships, self-confidence, social participation, and overall health. And as we heard from Johnny McMahon there, you know, there's a growing evidence base that show that people with hearing loss, you know, if they have an hearing aid, they have less risk of dementia coming in as well. So I think I'm pleased that the hundreds of people who've been denied this in the past will now be able to get what they deserve, and 343 patients were denied hearing aids after having an assessment between February 2021 and January 2022. Those people will all now benefit. And a lot of those people will be in Newcastle Borough, as they are in Staffordshire Moorlands, and a lot of them will be in my division of Westlands and Thistlebury. So I'm really pleased, and thank you for the work that councillors in this chamber have taken and chairs of the Health Scrutiny Committee have done over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, welcome to the gift of hearing. Those of you that have perfect hearing don't understand what it's like for those of us who had perfect hearing and with age that's deteriorated. And so the latest generation of hearing aids, which will now be available to the people of the north of our county, are really quite exceptional. And I think that you need to know what contribution you as members have paid towards getting that gift given to the people of North Staffordshire. Mr. Chairman, that phone, when it rings in my right ear, and I hear perfectly conversations which previously I had difficulties with. This meeting, with the addition of that, I can hear the conversations and the speakers perfectly well. And so I thank the Council for what it's done. In other rooms, we have loops, we have all sorts of amazing things which my hearing aids can now access. if you link that with all the sort of wonderful things which people can now hear, what that adds back again into their lives is absolutely amazing. I can even adjust it on my phone to be in a restaurant or in a theatre or into a whole stack of different situations. That is what the National Hearing Aid does for us. And so don't be in any doubts at all about the wonderful work that you as a council have done and the contribution that you've made. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Pert, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to talk a bit about the journey, but also about the future. So this decision was implemented 7 years ago in 2015. And yet, if we think back to 2015, so much has changed in that time. Back in 2018, there was a consolidation of the management teams within the clinical commissioning groups, the CCGs. And one of the things they were going to do when they first came together was to look to integrate their policies so that they had a single management team and a single set of policies. And yet today, 4 years later, different organisation, it is only now that that is happening. On the journey, however, back in January 2021, the Clinical Commissioning Group at the time decided, based on additional evidence which was available from NICE and the Clinical Priorities Advisory Group and the Clinical Senate, to actually commission hearing aids for moderate hearing loss for North Staffordshire CCG residents. Where we are today, however, is that this decision has impacted 343 people, nearly 343 people a year. That's nearly 2,500 people this decision has affected. It was against national guidance and guidelines. And as has been previously referred to, North Staffs was the only CCG across the country not offering hearing aids for mild hearing loss. As has been discussed earlier, mild hearing loss often happens gradually and painlessly, and you don't notice it. You feel like your ears are plugged or that people are mumbling. But there is an impact on brain, social isolation, relationships, amongst so many other things that have been discussed today. However, the Health and Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee never gave up. And I think it also shows the value of a county-wide health committee in challenging decisions that are being made that are clearly unjust and unfair. And I want to pay tribute to the members, both past and present, of that committee for the work that the committee has done, and specifically to the leadership of Dr. Johnny McMahon and Kath Perry during that time. I welcome the decision of the Integrated Care Board. There are lots of difficult decisions for us all in health and care. That could be about improving primary care access. That could be about trying to relieve the system pressures that we see. It could be about how do we create enough people to come into the NHS and social care to fill the gaps that we've got. And equally, how do we find financial stability? So in broad terms, I think that's a good start. It's a brave start. It should have been done before. But there is more to be done. So if I was marking their homework, I'd say, on an interim basis, that's a small tick in the box, but hey, we've got a lot more to do. But I am pleased that the Integrated Care Board has listened to our residents. It's a good place to be, and now 343 more people will be able to hear this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much has been said that I don't need to add to, but I would pay tribute to Kath Perry and her leadership of the Scrutiny Committee. I think, Kath, you were the first chair of a Health Scrutiny Committee who actually used the powers available to you in the Health and Care Act of 2011 and wrote to the Secretary of State highlighting this issue. So thank you for that bold step, which has taken a long time to come to fruition, but without your oomph behind it, we wouldn't be here today, I don't think. Councillor Atkins has made the point very well. North Staffordshire Clinical Commissioning Group has not covered itself in glory at all through the process of this hearing aids debacle. I was lobbied heavily as the portfolio holder by Action on Hearing Loss and others to try and persuade the North Staffs Clinical Commissioning Group to change their minds. A lot of us put our shoulder to the wheel to try and make this happen. However, it remains a cause of great concern to me, the shortage of democratic oversight and democratic participation in the delivery of health services across not just this county, but across England in general. We have the Health Scrutiny Committee, which is able to call people in and hold them to account. We have the Integrated Care Board, okay, which is the replacement for the clinical commissioning groups and others. Not a single elected member on the Integrated Care Board. We do have the Chief Executive as our representative there. We have the Integrated Care Partnership, which is a huge, amorphous mass of people who come together to talk about health and care across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent. 2 elected members on that, myself and the leader of Stoke-on-Trent City Council. It's as if the NHS disregard the voice of the people as manifested by the elected representatives here in this chamber. It continues to be a disappointment. I continue to demand more participation by elected members because we know what the people who elect us want. Charlotte Atkins has set it out very clearly in her description of the suffering of people in her division and others with Councillor Tagg in his division about this particular decision. We want more democratic participation in those decisions the NHS take that affect the lives of the people we represent, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Item 11, War in the Ukraine. Councillor Philip Atkins, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I tried to get in earlier on, but I didn't manage it, but I'll talk under this one. I'd like to say thank you to all those who've offered up their homes and time to take in families from the Ukraine. It's not been easy. Some have offered when they haven't got adequate premises. Some have taken them in, and some are trying to get jobs, work. But the help comes to an end fairly soon. So on the people that we're looking after. So I hope that that gets taken care of by government while they're working out everything else. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about the effects on the refugees from Ukraine of what's going on out there, and the effects that are going on about what's going on out there to us here. I think you can't really understand when you're living so far from your homeland and you've come perhaps with a car and a ruck of cash and your son and daughter and you've left your husband out there to fight. You really cannot get into their minds what mental ill health and well-being they're going through. But they've faced up to it. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about being a farmer in the Ukraine. Because last year we had Jeremy Clarkson as Farmer of the Year. This year we've had the Ukrainian farmers as Farmers of the Year. I don't think you can possibly understand what they're going through. Bodies in fields, targeted by drones, crop prices on the floor, no storage. They're storing it outside in plastic bags. Prices are so low that the wheat and barley crop for this next year is 30 to 50% down on the sowings. There's 200,000 hectares in the east of Ukraine that is under military occupation. That means that it's been fought over. The south and the west will take 1 to 2 years to get the infrastructure right. The east and north may never, ever come back into production and will take more than 5 years. The sort of day-to-day fertiliser, can't find it. If you can, it's out of the price. Seed, fertiliser, sprays, can you find them? That's why they're doing the best, and to have actually kept on farming while a war is going on around you is beyond belief. Is beyond belief. Your village might get shot up and your family shot. Mass graves. Can't really understand that. And the effect on the people here. But I tell you what, a couple of days ago, I rang up to find out what the price of wheat was in this country. It's doubled. And it can go up and down by £10 a tonne, depending on what Putin does. And it's when Councillor Parisi stood up and said, oh, it's all our fault. Price of wheat on Monday was 279. Tuesday it was 278. Yesterday it went down to, 289, 287. Yesterday it went down to 280. The note on the market commodity report said Putin sent no bombs or rockets over. Well, he did last night. It's back up to 289. Fertiliser in this country is £1,000 a tonne. 2 months ago it was 700. No, 3 months ago, 700. Last year you could get it at 250 because you need the gas to heat the air to capture the nitrogen. There are a whole host of problems that are coming out of the Ukrainian war in Ukraine, and they haven't finished. So when you talk about, oh, it's all the government's fault, remember what Putin has done. That Nord Stream 1 and 2 just didn't happen just like that. Your energy supplies and your food supplies that you've relied on being cheap for so long is gone. And you need nuclear power, you need wind, you need solar, you need all of that. And you also need food produced in this country to feed ourselves and not rely on imports from wherever you might get them. Ukraine supplies 30% of global grain and oil.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillor Richard Cox, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We, in the Lichfield district, and I don't know whether it's an honour, a privilege, or actually just amazing, we have an exceptional amount of people that are taking on, the hosts, taking on the Ukraine. So if there was a league table, and I'm not saying, but I'll be proud to say, we're at the top. But that is thanks to the hosts, because they have made it welcome the Ukrainian refugees, a lot of them young families. I had the privilege, and it was a privilege, to meet a young fella at the age of 14 at a hub meeting that we were having with our visitors. And he'd only been in the country 1 day. But he said, can you, and English was perfect, by the way, can you help me get into a football club? That was his only wish. And between a lady and myself, we found one. And he's thoroughly enjoying it. His grandmother has come over, because his mother has had to go back. It took months and months for her to get over here, but she wasn't allowed to because she's a judge. And she had to use holiday to bring her son to safety. And in doing so, was then able to bring her grandmother, her mother, and Misha's grandmother to Lichfield District. So we have regular meetings. It's absolutely fantastic. But I will say, utterly heartbreaking, that their wish is to be at home in Ukraine. And whatever we say, there is a tyrant that is causing all this misery for a lot of people. And God willing, the Ukrainians will persevere, and we can look forward to saying a fond farewell, but au revoir, to our guests that we are hosting within Lichfield. But I'd like to make a special tribute to one lady who's come forward who seems to just be full of energy. She's not on the council and anything like that, but she's full of energy, and it's Lynette Ranson. She is incredible, and I pay tribute to her as well, because often it's her tenacity to not let the initial response, we're struggling, but she'll keep going on and on until there's a satisfactory. But can I just concur with what Councillor Atkins has said? In terms of the 6 month, we're nearly there for a lot of our hosts. And if we're not careful, and if we have not got a plan together in terms of coordinating and being able to extend those hosts, we may be looking at new hosts, but we could also seriously have a housing situation as well through our districts and boroughs. So it's absolutely imperative that we get it right to ensure that their lives is as pleasant as possible in Staffordshire. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor John Francis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The time period which is lapsing a week or two has got to be extended. We cannot allow these people to be thrown out onto the street. And I'm sure the government, and I'm sure we won't anyway from our side, from the county council side. We're committed long term to this. The elements to this, as I alluded to earlier, particularly with energy use, is that Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been blown up in the North Sea. So that's, no way can that be recommissioned. Nord Stream 2 was half-built and that wasn't commissioned. 24 to 26% of our gas comes from Norway through a North Sea pipeline. And if Putin blows that up, that's our energy problems exacerbated. We've also got the company I work for did the DC transmission links between.
Can we get back on topic, please, John? It's about the war in Ukraine and how we're dealing with it.
Between France and Great Britain. And if those are cut, we've got a serious issue. That will impact on this council, these people, because these people are coming over here that we've got to look after, and our energy costs are going through the roof. Therefore, it will exacerbate the problems that they've got coming here. So we've got some serious issues here we need to address. And I know it's a national issue, but we need to look at it from our council point of view as well, because we cannot allow these people to go hungry or cold this winter. So we need to look at it from an holistic point of view and a global point of view, Chairman, not just from a narrow focus point of view.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to thank Councillor Philip Atkins for reminding us of the reality of the difficulties that we are seeing in Ukraine. And we just don't know really how people over there are coping, and our hearts go out to them. It's really hard to understand. We are so lucky to live in this county and this country. So 250 days ago, the country opened its doors to our friends in the Ukraine. Our team in Staffordshire hit the ground running. It was very tricky. It's now becoming more business as usual. We have 660 people, that's 390 groups. Lichfield and Stafford, yes, congratulations, you are the front runners. The work hasn't been without its issues, but with an enhanced team, these queries are now being managed quite easily, and we're happy to hear from members should they need any assistance, especially in terms of ongoing accommodation with sponsored families. Let's not forget, Ukrainians are not taking up private rented accommodation. They are residing with sponsors, of whom we have ample. And we are a welcoming county. We have a lot to offer. We're very, very grateful to all of those Staffordshire sponsors who've opened their homes and their hearts to those who need it most in Ukraine. And we expect that work to be ongoing, not just for 6 months, but
until further notice, until we get a positive result with the war in Ukraine. Thank you.
Leader of the Council, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We live in a world of short attention spans, ladies and gentlemen. You see it, don't you? The war in Ukraine, Putin thought it'd be over in a few days. It isn't. People are talking about it being over by Christmas. Where have we heard that before? It probably won't be. Military operations of this nature are always enduring. They grind on and on and on till the human cost gets too high for one or the other side to bear, and then a truce is declared. On a serious note relating to this war, if Russia is to be defeated in the field for the first time since 1917, because that's how long it will be since they were last defeated in the field, do we seriously think that Russia is going to just sit in the corner quietly? It is not. A nuclear-armed Russia is going to sulk in the corner and make life miserable for all of us, depriving of all of the world of its natural resources until such time as we kowtow to it again in the future. And Ukraine will need rebuilding, and that is going to require decades and billions, if not trillions of pounds and dollars to do. This is going to be a long war. It's going to require of us endurance and dedication and commitment to those people that we are trying to look after at this moment. We should continue to do so because it's the right thing to do. Putin's war is illegal. It is the wrong thing to do, and we should keep going until he is gone. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Cost of living. Councillor Mark Sutton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In October of 2020, this council made a decision to use the Household Support Fund, or whatever it was called at that time, to provide vouchers for children in receipt of free school meals for each week of the holiday. We have continued to do that through the various Household Support Fund grants that we've had since then, and in combination with the holiday activity and food programme, ensured for every week of the school holidays there was either a voucher or activities with food available. For the household fund that has just finished, we provided also £125 vouchers for made available for 22,000 pensioners who were in receipt of a reduced council tax. And all that has taken a lot of work, and I pay credit to the staff here who have done that work and worked really hard to be able to get that out. And over that time, we have provided help and support to many, many vulnerable children and families across the whole of this county. There is soon to be a delegated decision in regard of the next tranche of the Household Support Fund, and that will be divided again up between children entitled to free school meals, and they will be entitled to a £20 voucher at this half term coming up, the Christmas period, and also the half term in October. There'll be, and that will cost approximately 1.6 million of the funding. There will be 1.2 million allocated to the professional referral scheme, where professionals, including counsellors, will be able to refer directly for support for people that they know or people they are working for. And I will ensure that everyone in this chamber and all councillors across the whole of the county get details of how they would be able to get that done. We will be allocating 45,000 to care leavers, a voucher for the 45,000, to the care leavers across the county. That's 450 care leavers, a total of 45,000 of them. Following a successful trial in Newcastle, we are now being able to issue over 20,000 people across the county with slow cookers. My colleague Victoria Wilson was involved in that earlier this week. Some of you may well have seen the media about that. And then finally, 1.5 million will be allocated to the Warmer Homes project, administered through the Staffordshire Community Foundation, where again people will be targeted for support with bills and keeping their homes warm. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Saeed Hussain, please.
It's possible. Apologies for it. Apologies for it. It was. I'm up for the next questions, actually. No, not in this. So, sorry.
No problems. Councillor David Smith, please.
Chairman. I'm not sure whether I should apologise to the Leader of Council for bringing my concerns about electricity consumption under item 6 instead of under this item. But perhaps I won't bore Council by going through the whole thing all over again, but simply to emphasise that Councillor Johnny McMahon and I have put some suggestions together which we have discussed with various Cabinet members and the Deputy Leader of Council for a member-led project which could lead to community savings in their household energy consumption. And I would look forward to the opportunity, with the approval of the members, to bring that forward as a matter of urgency, Chairman, because the colder days have started as of today, I think. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Victoria Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So over £5 million is being spent this autumn and winter to help families with the cost of living. So I think that's a pretty good headline. There are initiatives all around the county, and I've been to several of them. I've been to Newcastle, where they're offering over 1,000 slow cookers to families who are eligible, as well as recipe cards and ingredient sachets so that people can cook food at very low cost. Slow cookers are very, very low cost energy. I've also been to Featherstone, where I visited a gentleman who'd had advice from us about how to save energy on his heating bills. I've also been to several libraries. I've been to Purton Library, where we're offering a warm welcome to people, so people can go into a library, have a free hot cup of tea or coffee, courtesy of Morrison's and Lakeside Dairies. They can speak to our volunteers. They can lend one of the million books, e-books and magazines that we have in the libraries. They can join the various workshops and craft groups and knit and natter. They can get out and meet people and feel welcome in their space in the library service within the County Council, which is fantastic. As you've heard, there are free school meals during the summer the various holidays. There are vouchers for school leavers. We're signposting people on our website to other energy saving schemes. There's a wealth of help out there for Staffordshire residents this autumn and winter. And this council allows its residents in Staffordshire to have a hand up, not a hand out. And we're working with 3- and 4-tier organisations, with parishes, boroughs and districts, community groups and businesses to support where it's needed, but also to help themselves and their communities. And this underlines everything that we are about here at Staffordshire County Council.
Thank you. I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Staffordshire Electoral Review Council size submission. Councillor Alan White, will you move the consideration report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the Local Government Boundary Commission for England coming back to us again after, I think, 13 or 14 years, taking a look at the scope and scale of the divisions across the county. There have been changes in the population numbers over the years. Everybody who's been around for a while will have noticed that. And therefore, we worked with them over a period of time to review that and look at what is appropriate for this county. All members have had a very good opportunity to be briefed about the work of the Local Government Boundary Commission. This is a 2-stage process. This is stage 1 coming to completion this morning, depending on what the council decides. And therefore, the recommendations as set out, Mr Chairman, all councillors can see before them, and I look forward to listening to what people have got to say before we conclude the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Philip White, will you second?
Reserve the right to speak later in the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Whittington, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. First thing I'd say is it seems to come around with alarming regularity, the Local Boundary Commission. There's always one part of the local authority that's being scrutinised. But I think in this case it's fairly important. I've looked at the template and all I can say is thank you to whoever's taken the time to do this, because it's very thorough and full of information, and I hope the Electoral Commission actually take note of that. The sentence on page 17, second sentence, is that in the Council view, the evidence set out demonstrates that the current size of 62 elected members supports effective and efficient leadership. What I want to quickly sort of flag up for the future is that although 62 is sensible, we realise that there has been a lot of growth in the county in the last 13 years, in particular in Stafford and Burton as well, as I'm sure Philip White's more than aware. The meridian for councils that are put into the report is the average is 9,228 electorate per councillor. In Staffordshire, that's actually nearly 10% more, at 10,700 per councillor. And in my sort of area, and in Stafford, because it was a growth point, because it's a growth area, and there's still growth going forwards, the projected figures are, in particular, the ones I've picked out. Nosal and Doxey is 15,300, Eccleshall 13,000, and Stafford Central 13,000. Now, as local councillors, nearly 1.5 times the average amount of electors is challenging sometimes without the mix of different areas. I've got incredibly rural. I've got a petition from a rural area now, and I've also got a built-up area. So I think there's more work to be done. Not sure about Burton, but I think Stafford could almost justify another seat within the area because of the growth that we've got. This is the first stage, and I hope that as councillors we all engage in this and put our views forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saeed Hussain, please.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Just to reassure that this side of the House, we'd like to support this proposal as well. And we are very grateful to our officers. They are very cooperative and made us understand with very simple language what's going on with all these graphics and statistics as well. So thanks once again, and we'd like to support this first stage of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Greatrix, please.
Chairman, just to check in and say that this has been in front of corporate review, and there are some stats that I'd like to draw out from the report. Firstly, on page 35, the one figure that's not there is the increase in numbers of residents. And I know Councillor Whittington's just referred to the increases and the effects that has. I've looked at the totals at the bottom of the page, and the overall effects for the whole county is 9.3% increase between what is current and what is envisaged in projected 2028. Now, you could say that a 9.3% increase in numbers of people to represent suggests that we should be increasing numbers. Corporate review certainly wasn't of that opinion. In some respects, you don't want to frighten the horses and make too many strident changes, and keeping with the same number that members and the electorate are familiar with is to our advantage. But I also think that increasing the number of residents by 9.3% doesn't increase the workload by that amount. When you bear in mind that the majority of my postbag is about highways, I'm hoping that 9.3% more cars on the road don't disintegrate the roads to that effect. So we shouldn't see that increase. We've mentioned earlier about cost of living and social care, ironically, producing new housing estates should take away some of the previous housing issues that we've had on some of the older housing, and just by introducing new estates with new design should improve the quality of life for those residents that we're newly accommodating. So the other page that I'd draw your attention to, just to put it in context, is page 57. And if you look at that, you realise just how big Staffordshire is in terms of the electorate and number of residents. And we actually dwarf most counties, apart from Lancashire, which has 84 members because it's so large. So I'm not suggesting we go away from the 62 figure we had. If we increase the number by the 9.3, that would actually mean we should be increasing to 68, I have calculated. So we're actually giving the electorate value for money if we can accommodate the same work with the same 62, which Corporate Review was happy to support. The other thing that Corporate Review was very keen to support is the aspiration to have a single member per division. And certainly that's part of phase 2, if you like, that when we get down to looking at the individual numbers, we'll have to make sure that we can try and accommodate better than happened last time.
Thank you. Councillor Philip White, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just responding to a couple of comments from the report, the submission for 62 members is a minimum. And it may be that during the second stage of this process, when we look at the precise arrangements for divisions, that, as Councillor Winnington's indicated, there may be a case for there to be 1 or 2 more councillors. And I'm very aware of that personally, because I think my division is possibly the one that's expected to be the largest by the end of the period that the review is considering. So we are very mindful of that. And that's very important, both in terms of effective representation of our electorate locally and authentic representation as well of communities that we really understand. But it's also making sure that the business of this council can continue as well. All of our committees do not run themselves. They need members on them who are serving actively, and we need sufficient numbers of members to be able to do all of that effectively as well. So this is step 1 in the process. I agree with the comments about the quality of the report that's been produced. It's excellent work. And thank you to the officers who've done that. This is stage 1. I think it's been done in the right way. We'll move on to stage 2, where we'll do that detail. We will get, I think, the right result for Staffordshire through that. Thank you.
Would the leader like to respond to the debate?
Mr. Chairman, we did look at the numbers quite carefully and whether or not the numbers could be reduced. It is incumbent upon us at every stage to be certain that we can't try and reduce the cost of democracy to the taxpayers, because the taxpayers pay for us to be participating in this forum. But it is very clear that with the number of scrutiny committees we have, the number of regulatory committees we have, and the workload you have as frontline councillors, any less than 62 would make it start to be heading towards parliamentary constituency size and all that's associated with that. So we wouldn't be able to transact the business of this authority. We wouldn't be able to give it sufficient oversight for a huge multi-million-pound budget each year. So that was a rationale behind the no less than 62. As they go through the process, as Councillor White's alluded to, they may look at it and say, actually, you might need a few more because of the changes in the demographics across the county. The point about Stafford is well made, and your point about East Staffs as well. The request for the single member review, if we don't put in the request now, it can't happen. And we did the single member review last time we had the electoral review coming to take a look at us. That said, no, you've got to stick with 2 double member divisions. We're asking for them to take another look at it, and there's the councillors that are affected by this are in the room now. They will do that, and they will come to their conclusions and make their recommendations accordingly. The next phase, stage 2, is where you need to really strap in and pay attention, because that's where the Electoral Commission start to look at the boundaries around your division, whether or not they need to be flexed, what part gets flexed, and sometimes they do things which leave you scratching your head. For those of us who've been involved in parliamentary review processes, in Lichfield, for example, the Parliamentary Review Commission is looking at taking street hay from Lichfield into Tamworth. It has no place in Tamworth. So therefore, all of us, as they start to look at your divisions, please do Participate in that very carefully, because what you don't want is residents in your division going, why am I part of that division? I've got nothing to do with that area, and therefore it's incumbent on you to monitor that very carefully. So please do watch out for stage 2. That will be happening in the new year. Thank you very briefly to Kerry Dove and Katie Marshall, who have been absolutely wonderful as the officers leading this. Thank you. And I move the recommendations as set out, Mr. Chairman. Nearly forgot to do that then.
It's been moved and seconded that the recommendations contained in this report be approved. Is that agreed? Item 7, report of a chairman of the Staffordshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel. Councillor Peters, will you move the consideration of the report, please? Councillor Jill Hood. Councillor Gillian Padesi, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, page 69, the second paragraph to last. Are we seriously being told that firefighting unions are saying they would not attend emergencies during strike action, because that is what is being suggested here? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Phil Hudson, please. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I say how great it is to be back in the Chamber, and can I thank all members who sent me wishes of get well and support during my recent illness. What can I say about this report? I know I'm in my 10th year of retirement from Staffordshire Police, but having spent 30 years of my life with my colleagues helping to protect the members of the public of Staffordshire, that report on the inspection hurts. It hurts a lot. And when I receive weekly complaints from local residents, it's embarrassing about how they are interacting with Staffordshire Police, the lack of communication, some of the decisions that are made, the lack of investigation into what can be quite simple matters, and it hurts me because I can't really defend what's going on. It also hurts that since the report, there seems to be little improvement at the moment demonstrated. But it's not all bad news. I've met the new Chief Constable, and Chief Constable Chris Noble is a good bloke. He's a good guy. I worked under 4 Chief Constables, and he's got a hell of a job to do, and so has the Commissioner, because we're not going to fix this problem in 5 minutes. This is going to take years. And I welcome going back to 10 BCUs, Basic Command Units, which has improved the response times, particularly at Uttoxeter. I think they could go one stage further and perhaps have some response officers at Uttoxeter, and I will be meeting the Chief in the next few weeks and speaking to him about that. I also welcome the Home Secretary's words of advice to them that they attend all burglaries, which is good, but when are they actually going to attend? I hear horror stories where a burglary is reported and it's sometimes a few days before they go, so they really got to look at that and their effectiveness. I also welcome the Home Secretary's advice that stop worrying about the people that we may be investigating. Stop worrying what they're going to say. I find that today there's a lack of taking ownership of issues. I've got experience of that in my borough ward. And we've got to stop worrying about what will people think about me if I've got to go and investigate something. If I thought about that over the 30 years of my service, nothing would have got done. So they've got to improve the way in which they investigate things, improve the way in which they communicate with the public, and take on ownership of things. things will get better, and I have every faith in the new Chief Constable. He's got a hell of a job, and so is the Commissioner, but I wish them well, and they always get my support, even though it does become embarrassing sometimes to defend the actions of Staffordshire Police, but things will get better, I am sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ashad Asfar, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Referring to the police and crime update, it is noted that there was a perception that antisocial behaviour was increasing. However, the Commissioner informs that this is not the case. Certainly in my hometown of Burton-on-Trent and the division I represent, Burton Town, we're seeing a large increase in antisocial behaviour. These incidents range from violent attacks on individuals to knife crime. It was only last week a caretaker at the Burton Library was assaulted, and also a member of the public going about his normal evening out was attacked in a vicious manner, leaving him with life-threatening injuries. Can I ask what more can be done to ensure the service that are promised by the Commissioner are delivered to the residents without fail and in a timely manner? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bob Spencer, please.
Chairman, thank you for that. I also think, just following on from what our colleague was talking about there, the perception of crime, as we all know, is just as bad as being a victim, really, of crime. However, what I would urge members to do is to try to have an understanding, I'm not suggesting for a second that you don't, of the precise nature of the crime or disorder in your area. Certainly, I hear all sorts of comments about various things. The latest one was that South Staffordshire suffers from county lines. I'm confident it doesn't. If you look at the facts and figures, there is no evidence to suggest that, and that is just an example. There are numerous websites and various other things. If members would like to know how to have a better understanding of crime in their area, I'm more than happy to point them in that direction and get an understanding of how you do that. What I would like to say also about this report, and I certainly welcome it, is that we always concentrate, don't we, on those criticisms that are contained within it. I think that we shouldn't forget, and sometimes it gets overlooked, that actually the fire service had got a finding of an inspection of being good, despite the fact that they do need to make some improvements. I think that it's a shame if we miss the fact that the fire service come out of this report really well. I think we've all read that report, and it's not only that one, of course, there are other reports, and I agree with what's just previously been said about those systemic failures in the organisation. There's another report called the Peel report. It's online, and that doesn't make particularly good reading. I do think, though, and this is not to minimise the criticisms that have been made in those reports, we need to recognise that a lot of those systemic failures actually found their origin prior to the appointment of both the recent current Commissioner and our Chief Constable. I do emphasise that's not to minimise them, but I think they're inheriting problems and are moving towards finding solutions. I would also point out, certainly as chair of the Safeguarding Committee here, which is also the crime and disorder panel for the county, I have had, since the appointment of the new Commissioner and the Chief Constable, I've had numerous invitations to come and see various things. The latest one was around the attacks at Fishmongers Hall that people will probably remember as a terrorist attack in London. Unfortunately, the offender for that attack lived and was being managed here in Staffordshire. Now, the lessons that were learned from that, I had a personal invitation to go along to a multi-agency committee about, and if I could reassure people, all of the members here, all of those particular committees, there was no criticism of this council, although there were heavy criticisms of things like the prison service and various other agencies that perhaps failed to act at the right time. The point I'm making, though, is that I personally see a great deal, well, an increased openness and transparency around the policing here in Staffordshire from both the Commissioner and the Chief Constable. And I think that's an example of that. And I would certainly commend the panel for this report, because similar to previous reports, what we have seen is that they are clearly asking the right questions and making the right safeguarding issues around that. I'll just finish by saying, in line with that openness, I very much welcome the panel's invitation to my committee to join together. And I think I look forward to that invitation. And actually, as our colleague said over there, to return Staffordshire Police to, certainly from my police service, to that reputation it had previously of being probably one of the best police forces anywhere in the country. And actually, more importantly than that, to return that service to the people of Staffordshire that they deserve. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I've had Councillor Dr. Johnny McMahon's like come. I don't know if is Paul Northcote waiting to speak? No. Okay. I'll call then Councillor David Williams, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I just need to clarify, and I can't see anywhere within this report that it says that the fire service isn't going to be able to man and sufficiently staff if there is industrial action. I'll just, for members' information, not all members of the fire service are members of the FBU. There are several unions that work with the fire service, and not all members are not all officers are members of the union. A lot of work goes on prior to industrial actions to ensure that areas can be covered, people are moved around, and in the last few industrial actions we haven't lost that immediate action. All areas have been covered, especially the hold time areas. But in nowhere does it I can see in that report that it says that they won't be covered, so I thought that may be a point of clarification for Councillor Pardesi. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Cox, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I can't concur in the sense what Councillor Hudson is saying, but I think we've got to look forward in terms of we have a new Chief Constable in Chris Noble. We obviously we have a new Commissioner, and we've got to have, and I use the word confidence, we've got to have confidence in their ability. And it looks like to me that they are setting us on the right path. Obviously, the panel will have a duty to obviously question the Commissioner over various things, including obviously one of the things colleague has just said on about the safeguarding. That was an issue within the report, and we're clearly going to be looking at that. So the key word for me is confidence of going forward with what we have in front of us. And I'm absolutely sure that is the way we're going to get results that will get Staffordshire back in a good place with its policing. So that's what I would employ all members of all sides. Stop browbeating and look positive and look forward, because if we keep belly aching about the past, we're going to have a problem. We recognise the past, but let's look forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Parry, please. Councillor Philip Atkins, then, please.
I think after listening to what Philip Hudson had to say and Richard Cox, I concur. We need to look forward, but there's certainly something about a proportionate and appropriate response by the police to things that go on in our divisions. And I note in the paragraph that the Commissioner there's a spelling mistake in there, there's a D missing, that our overview and safeguarding overview committee has got roles in that. But I do have to say that one of the problems was when commissioners were brought in. When we had councillors on the police authority, we made sure we had an on-the-ground knowledge of what was going on around the county. and would question why when there was a need for more officers in Cannock, let's say, that they hadn't got them there because there was more crime. We have that on-the-ground experience that I'm sure the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will bring to it. But I think, you know, he brought the Commissioner in, and that was one of the issues that came. How one person can cover a county with 1.2 and city with 1.2 million people in it and understand it, I just cannot get my head round and never have. The magistrates on the committee also brought a different thing where they made sure that the police were appropriate. They were very against on-the-spot fines. They really did believe in justice, as I do. And I have to remind members that it's habeas corpus in this country, not corpus juris. You're innocent until proved guilty, not as on the continent and many police states where you must be guilty because we nicked you. Now, in our areas, Phil Hudson's and mine, there are police. You can't see them. I saw them in Carter Street pull somebody up in an unmarked police car the other day. So there is action going on, but it's not visible. And if people aren't going around if police aren't going around to say, we'll investigate a burglary and just handing you a crime number through the phone, as an insurance assessor, I can just tell you, your insurance premiums will go up for the unsolved crimes. When you actually get down and talk about children's safeguarding, youth offending service, the police, arson, whatever it may be, I can remember over the 35 years, soon to be 36 years, I've been a county councillor, when we've sat down together, we've come up with virtually the same family names. I dare say that it'd be the same family names that I wrote down 25, 30 years ago today. There is a very small proportion of our population that are causing all of this trouble, and that is where the county council has a real clear role to work with the police and the fire service. And as I said, I just cannot see how a commissioner can cover 1.2 million people. However it got dreamed up by Theresa May and Brandon Lewis, I just don't understand. I don't very often speak against my own, but in this particular instance, I will.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Edgler, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've just got to say that we've got a new Chief Constable, and what's been said in the report actually refers back to what was happening before. This Chief Constable now is doing a really good job. He's started well, actually, in so much so, I mean, he's putting the Chief Inspectors out on the roads now and talking to people, and that even in my area alone tonight, the Chief Inspector is out there to answer questions and everything. But if you're so interested in what's happening with the Police Fire Commissioner and the Chief Constable, I attended a meeting last week where the Police Fire Commissioner was putting questions to the Chief Constable, and it was very interesting. The next meeting, I believe, is in January. So I would recommend to all councillors to follow that meeting and just find out what the Crime Commissioner is asking to the Chief Constable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burnham-Peters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really interesting to hear the wide views and opinions. And first of all, let me say that I want to thank Councillor Cox for his very, very focused comment, which reflect the work that we are doing in terms of we're looking forward. It's always nice to hear a bit of history, but is it relevant to the situation today? And that's the question I always ask myself. I'd like to thank Councillor Spencer for adding clarity to the operational issues of the police force, which is always something we value and need to understand. The points raised about the fire service, the report identifies specific concerns around bonfire night. Now, that's a drumbeat message that's been going on for years. And why don't you, as members of the public, take more care? The fire service has switched onto it and will deal with it. Every meeting we have, I challenge the Commissioner regarding industrial relations within the fire service. And he has promised to come back to us with an update at the next meeting. and we'll certainly be drilling into that specific point. Now, I have a few words to say that relate to the Peel report, which is the gist of the comments that are being made today. And the recent Police and Crime Panel report contained the reference to the Peel inspection report, which has recently been published. The Commissioner felt that some of the actions that he has already taken, such as the new local policing model and call centre improvements, would significantly help to address some of the issues that have been raised. The panel have also either attended or watched the Commissioner's performance management meeting with the Chief Constable, and the force's performance is always going to be monitored in some detail. My colleague, Mrs. Edgeler, made reference to that meeting, and when they're held, I think the next one is in January time, members of the public, you ought to tell your constituencies to watch it on webcast or get to the meeting and ask the questions if they have any specific concern. Despite this panel the panel remains concerned that the issues raised by the inspection report need to be looked at in more detail, and I will ensure that my panel does just that. As the County Council's Safeguarding and Overview and Scrutiny Committee covers community safety issues, it is felt and it will be enabled that we avoid duplication and we bring transparency to monitoring the police. And I'm grateful once again to Councillor Spencer for making reference to the proposed meeting that we'll be having in the next few weeks to discuss exactly the way ahead that each of our panels should take. Happy to take any more questions if there are any.
There will be no more questions. That debate is now closed. I move that the report be received. Is that agreed? Agreed. Questions under Standing Order 8. Members, the 5 questions and answers have been circulated to members and published on our website. In accordance with the usual procedures, the questions and answers will be taken as read. I will allow each questioner 5 minutes in which to ask a supplementary question and to receive an answer. No debate is allowed on questions. Question 1. Councillor Pritchard to Councillor David Williams. Councillor 2. Councillor Hussain to Councillor Wilson.
Oh, it's working now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to thank Cabinet Member Councillor Victoria Wilson for this, for her reply. Mr. Chairman, these questions comes up most related to what's going on, especially with the cost of living crisis as well. A tragedy for many, many people in our divisions. And it's not just these people are just having job seeker allowance or on the benefit. This is in-work poverty, what we can see. On a Sunday, when I gave 2 containers of food from my local soup kitchens to Mrs. P, when she visited with her 9-year-old daughter and some dry bread. And if you can see it in their face, it's like it is hurting that much, Mr. Chairman. They don't have any clue how they're going to do the increasing mortgage, the energy cost, and so on. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, the reason I'm saying that the existing facilities, which is provided from the local community centers, they're doing a fantastic job, but we got some new rules coming in whenever I'm talking about our £2,500 grants, that you cannot give the rent or anything to the existing project. So as a result, these small organizations, they cannot keep their doors open. So will the cabinet member sit down or meet with me on some particular community centers or groups who are really struggling in these circumstances and why they are really doing a heroic job to serve those communities? Thank you.
Councillor Afsar to Councillor Price. No supplementary. Councillor Charlotte Atkins to Councillor Jessel.
Yes, just to say in my supplementary, I very much agree with the Leader of the Council that this is a very undemocratic body. And I think this Integrated Care Board is a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't seem very integrated with the County Council, and nor on occasions does it appear to be very caring. And I'm really concerned that they just seem to pay lip service to public involvement. And it's very worrying when the NHS has such challenges at the moment, and probably future challenges as well, that we don't have an input into this body. And of course, the Health Select Committee questions them via a sort of ghostly online link. But I don't really feel that they're kept accountable. And although it must be an improvement on the clinical commissioning groups, which were fairly often disastrous, I really fear that they're not accountable enough for what they do.
Councillor Daisy to Councillor Sutton.
When can schools expect more funding to feed the hungry children that come into school? We're told here, if there's no eligibility, then the school would look to support the children. Well, head teachers and teachers are saying they feel they've been abandoned. It's assumed and taken for granted that if hungry children come into school, somehow the school will use their funds, or indeed teaching staff will use their own money to feed children who come into our schools. The situation is not sustainable, and I'd like to know when schools can expect additional funding to feed the children who are coming in hungry.
Thank you. Councillor Jessel, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sutton.
Right, I'm on, thank you. A question, I think, for the Secretary of State for Education and not myself.
Thank you. I think I'll cut Councillor Atkins short. I didn't hear a question, but I'm told there was one. So if Councillor Jessel would like to respond to Councillor Atkins, please.
Chairman, I think in all fairness to Councillor Atkins, it was more a statement of her views, which I have to say I don't necessarily disagree with, but I don't think it was a question per se. Thank you very much, Chairman.
That was how I took it as well, why I didn't refer it. No. Item 9, petitions, and we have 3 today. I will first call Councillor Jessel. The answer was, it's not a matter for this council, right to the Secretary of State. Councillor Jessel, you are down for a petition. Do you have one?
I do, Chairman, and if I may say a few words, I would be most grateful. This petition was presented to me a few weeks ago by a lovely lady who lives on the Churchfields estate in Yoxall. She epitomises what we would all like to see in, I won't say older people, but more mature people. She's in her 80s, she's very alert, very community-spirited, and she has a petition here with 704 signatures about the state of the pavements. She unfortunately tripped up on one of the pavements. She takes her dog a walk 4 times a day. She puts me to shame of how much energy she has. And she, like me, is very keen to encourage more people to walk. As a local authority and as a nation, we have comprehensive plans to encourage active travel. And that tends to have focused on cycling and more cycling routes, because I think the cycling lobby has been far more effective, and I'm not particularly aware of a national pedestrian lobby. Perhaps it's all considered to be a little bit pedestrian. Millions has been spent in Staffordshire and elsewhere on cycling routes, but I don't particularly notice a vast increase in cycling, but my goodness, we all walk. I understand the financial pressures with highways, but I would ask that wherever within the rules, that actually we push to the top of the agenda the needs of pedestrians, because everybody walks. This is a petition about the complaint about pavements. I, like a lot of local members, use their devotional highways budget to get some patching done, but I have to say it's probably not the most effective. So if I could hand this petition in, and in the hopes that we refocus
Thank you.
our resources. Thank you very much.
The next petition is Councillor Hutton, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a petition from some constituents of mine on Hillport Avenue, where they have rather a lot of lime trees all clustered in one area. These lime trees are leading to damage on their vehicles and houses, and they would like, ideally they'd like them placed with trees that don't damage the houses, but if that can't happen, they would like them heavily pruned. And they've given an estimate for one vehicle to be repaired, it's paintwork to repaired, which comes to £750. If you multiply that by the number of vehicles that are affected, it comes to quite a hefty sum for the council. So I hand this petition in and ask that something can be done about the trees. Thank you.
Thank you. Final petition, which is a late entry. Councillor Winnington, please.
Late than never. This is a petition that has been collected from the residents and people who live and work in Shebden and Abberston in particular, and the road is Shea Lane. And a month ago, basically, they were told that the road was closed and the culvert had collapsed underneath it. Now, this is a major route. In the area, we've got some incredibly strong rural businesses. We've got a plant hire firm, 2 major hauliers, a biodigester, and of course the farms. There's no access from Newport side to local services, the post, fuel, carers, which I'm aware that is incredibly important to a lot of people. And it's a major link for communities from the A519 and A41, and there's a lot of people also use that link who aren't from the area. This has caused amounts of misery for people on the diversionary routes. These are all small lanes, and it's, I feel, unacceptable. And the reason is that the quote has been given, it'll take 1.5 years to mend this road. Remember, this is a major road in a rural area, lots of businesses, and I've got to go to them and say, we've been told it's 1.5 years to repair it, and it is unacceptable. And the other thing is, residents have asked, can they have a temporary system, even if it's a one-way system or a single pathway? I know officers have looked at it and they've rejected the first tranche, which was using road plates, but please, think about this, because this is people's lives we're playing with. We want them to grow, to support themselves, and then we're saying it's going to take 1.5 years to repair a road. It's poor. So I'd like to pass this petition of 613 signatures on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winnington. Item 10 is exclusion of public. We have no business to discuss under that. Can I thank everybody for their cooperation today? I think we've had quite a good meeting. And until we meet again, take care and look after your residents.